I made you
Oh, okay,
host.
so I have control of that. Okay, cool. Sweet.
All right, I will
Recording
talk
is in
to you
progress.
all at some point.
Thank you, Cam.
All right. So let me get to my stopwatch. I guess we'll do 5 minutes each, since there's only 3 stories. I think that works out time-wise. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 25. Yeah, that's about right. And then a little bit of time after each. Okay, so I enjoyed this. I literally wrote in my notes at the end, well, hell yeah, I like all that. So it's interesting though, because you were kind of looking to it as, is it a prologue, or is it not, kind of thing. So I kind of read it looking for places where I think, or where I thought there would be like, well, you don't really need to go any further than this kind of thing. And it's interesting because almost every plot beat, I think you could end at, because there's just enough like hanging plot after each one of them, because the story itself, like you said, it's a short story. It works on its own. It's a complete story from beginning to end. It has an arc. It goes somewhere and all that other stuff. So I almost felt like if you're going to have it as a prologue, since like a novel is like 50,000 words bare minimum. So if we're talking like bare minimum 50,000 words, this is 7,500 of them. So that would be like a huge chunk of your novel, if it's bare minimum novel length. If it's like if it's 100,000 words, then it's still like 7% of your book is prologue. So what I thought might be like a good thing to do is then, like we were talking about your other prologue, breaking it up into chunks and like sprinkling it throughout the book is like like a continuous background plot that then gives meaning to whatever's happening in the story throughout the book or something. It's an option that crossed my mind. But yeah, the writing itself is really good. It's pretty engaging. There was a few times where I had to turn critique brain back on because I was just kind of reading. I liked being in Dulcie's head. I thought it was really interesting and awful at the same time. Like her life fucking sucks, and it's very clear. At first, it's a little bit like, what the heck is her deal? But you get used to like what her deal is. I feel pretty quickly. The magic system is super interesting, I thought. Like the world has a very Witcher vibe. I don't know how involved you are in the Witcher, or how familiar you are. Yeah, but I mean, basically, the general vibe is like people with powers are treated like shit, and you're like, why? like in the X-Men, like how do people have the balls to like talk smack to all these people that could like blow them up and stuff like that? But I mean, the answer is numbers. Like there's a lot more humans, and they can take you out. So. And gaslighting, there was like so much gaslighting. Gaslighting from birth, so like that, it all psychologically made sense to me why she was in the place she was and why she was thinking the things that she was thinking. And I also thought there was enough mystery, for me to want to read more. So I think if it is a prologue, depending on where you cut it, you're either gonna want to sprinkle it out throughout or have a really long novel or something like that. Now, the only other criticism I think was that Dulcie's very separated from everyone else, and I get that. That's kind of part of her condition. But almost because of that, everyone else seemed kind of inexplicable at times. Like Henry made sense a lot. He's a kid. He acts like a kid. He does kid things. Doesn't really think past 5 minutes or whatever. But like Mandros, no clue. I don't think you're supposed to necessarily know what his goals and motivations and stuff are, because he's like a giant monster elephant head guy. I get it's a helmet, but he's pretty inexplicable, so I get that. But a lot of the other people, like they like father, kind of the way he treats her, but then doesn't treat her at other times. And it's stated that I think it was Jeno or Jero knows better than to like talk shit about her, except that he does like the entire story.
He does, yeah.
like the entire like they're like, yeah, he knows better than to say shit about me around father. Proceeds to do it the entire story. So I wasn't sure if that was like just she doesn't get it, like she doesn't understand what he's like,
45 seconds.
or if it was like a thing. Yep, thank you. So yeah, just like a little bit more. I mean, like again, I don't know if it's necessary for you to explain what their motivations are, because that could be something that like unfolds throughout the course of the novel. But it just it was I enjoyed it. Like I said, it was fun to watch Arrow Carrie get her revenge on everyone at the prom. But yeah, there's like I said, I think you just need to chop it up somehow, like slice and dice it and serve it on a platter a little differently. But other than that, I enjoyed the hell out of it, man. Thank you.
All right, shall I just begin?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so the thing that worked for me most was actually the level of sympathy that you create for Dulcie. Like right off the bat, I empathized with her. I felt so freaking bad for her, and just wanted the world for her, and that drove me. That kept me glued to the page and kept me wanting to read through to the end, because I wanted her revenge so hard. And so bravo on that, because that was fantastic. Um, create immediate empathy for your main character is really really good. Um, and there were parts during what was happening that I was losing interest in what was actually happening, but just uh, my sheer desire for to learn what's going to happen to this character next, because I cared about her so much, really kept me going through the whole thing. Now, there's another thing I wanted to compliment you on is I'm not sure what you call it, but you seem to have this great ability at creating mystery and intrigue, like especially like the first page in particular, what unfolded so perfectly in how like you created questions in my mind, like what is happening here, but the types of questions that make you want to read on and discover, like, why does Dulcie feel in this way? Why is Dulcie like that? Why where are they going? What are they doing? And you did it then, and you also did it like after she passes out on that horror tree, and then wakes back up, and it's going to be heartbreaking. You already know, like, kind of where this is going. At the same time, when she wakes up and she's kind of delirious, not knowing what's going on, you seem to have this great ability at it's like making like, again, I'm not sure how to put it, but I think you get the idea of like what I'm talking about. And it's like your ability to create questions as to what's going on that keeps the reader hooked and wanting to know more. So that worked really well for me. The whole Stephen King's Carrie revenge thing was awesome. I was cheering her on and I liked the formatting that you did of like single line, space, like I am lead flower, and just slaughter her father. I like stood up and cheered for that. As far as whether this works as a prologue, I mean, if what comes next is like 30 years later kind of thing, then it of course has to be a prologue. Yeah. And I think Liam makes a good point that it is long for a prologue, but I think that can be fixed up by shortening certain parts of it. Because I commented in the notes I sent you that the whole segment of father negotiating with Madros, them meeting, them negotiating, and then this kind of the celebration afterwards. I think most of that, or at least a good chunk of that, could be clipped. Because during that time, I was losing interest, because that's during that whole segment, Dulcie was just a spectator, and I don't care about the father. I hate the father back, and obviously that's what you're going for. So I'm not interested in the things that are only happening to him. I just want to see I want to see how this affects Dulcie. That whole scene, only concerned Madros and the father. I think that could be shortened to just like tighten things up. And one other criticism I got to make is the dialogue. So for certain characters, for Dulcie and Henry, I think it worked great. For Jared as well, it worked pretty well. Just the obnoxious bully. But for the father, I don't know. There was something about like his dialogue. It didn't seem natural. Like in certain places, and I noted in the notes I sent you, there were a number of times where it was like a "as you know, Dave" kind of thing. And then also one thing that really stood out to me was Medros' speech. He sounded he sounded just like the father, and that didn't really make sense to me. Like the way you described this Medros guy, he's like a wild, like a savage. And I feel like it would work a lot better if you give his voice like an accent. You know what I mean? You know, like,
30 seconds.
give him a manner of speech that that makes the reader hear him speaking with an accent or broken English or something like that. Yeah, that's about what I have to say. Yeah, the rest is in the notes I section. Overall, it was very good. Again, my attachment to Dulcie really, really was the biggest thing, and that made the whole thing enjoyable.
All right. And now it's Lance.
Ah, yes. All right. As I wrote down, bones to build a great story here. No pun intended. I just realized that now. But I would suggest honing in on one theme a little bit, depending on whether this is going to be a book or stay as a short story, meaning that you've got the father who merely used his freak child, the sperm donor who now takes advantage of her. So you've got this abusive father and survivor child dynamic. That's one way to go. And then you have the other families who treat her as a freak. So she's the black sheep trying to fit into the family. And she's even the outsider as to the whole culture trying to fit in. So you've got those going on. Then you also have, on a more internal level, the damaged person who holds all this power but has not yet learned to wield it. Okay, that's a whole nother dynamic. The child just simply growing up and becoming her own person also appears here. And the person coming to recognize her own power that arises from what makes her a freak. All right. So you got at least these types of dynamic going on. And I get the idea of like picking one main and maybe one minor, simply because that helps you figure out what to keep and what to cut out, what details to embellish, what details to keep down. Also, on that, there are two major pivot points in this. You've got when she recognizes that she can control the wind and manipulate the arrows without the archers. That's the first thing she realizes. And then when she stands up to the father, to Gerald, and to the world in general. So you've got these two different, like really important moments happening, which suggest that the father-daughter dynamic, and then perhaps her coming of age could also be like the major things to focus on in this. There was something about Dulcie being so naive that I wanted to smack her sometimes. Like, how could you possibly think dad is nice to you? It's like, this is a good person. So there was a little bit of this. She's at times magnanimous and even wise with regards to her brother. And yet she's like hopelessly naive at times. So there was some of that I wanted to get a little bit straightened out. And I didn't know whether this is going to turn out to be a tragedy. Like, is she just simply not going to realize what's going on? And this is all just going to be like terrible for her for the rest of her life? Or whether or not she was actually going to realize something, come out of it. The brother I really read as being a quisling. At one point in time, I really thought he went behind the family's back to sell her out to the Elephant Man. And yet she's being really nice to him. So I was a little bit, wow. I wasn't sure how she relates to her younger brother. Now, if he didn't do that, and he just is a loudmouth, okay, fine, that's cool. But he says something where he corrects the Elephant Man on what the terms were, as if he had gone behind the family's back to sell the daughter to them. And he wasn't respecting the terms that those two guys had worked out together. That's where that came from. father, like I said, he's just a sperm donor. He's not a father. And yeah, it's great that he's dead. They got what they deserved. So those things worked. Now, Bone Men, sure, they didn't hurt her, but they participated in the poisoning. They participating in the capture of all the soldiers, etc. It seems to me that they deserved some form of punishment. I don't know, arrows chasing them off, having them locked up in that cave, something like that, because it seems like they kind of got off scot-free.
30 seconds.
30? Okay. Lungs. The fire in the lungs, I didn't get it. I wasn't sure how to take it. I couldn't get my head around it. I didn't know what it really did. It seems really important to the plot a couple of times, but I didn't know how. It could definitely be used symbolically, the smoke representing her being used by her father and her coughing it out when she finally stands up to her father. I don't know. That just occurred to me in the last moment. And sometimes the mechanics of the change in her physical being was hard to follow at times.
And that's time.
Yes, almost perfect.
Almost nailed it. All right, Chris, you're up.
Okay, so I'll definitely start by saying that I really enjoyed this story in and of itself, Dan. I think that this is some of the most polished work that I've read from you. You've definitely got a lot of good elements to work with. I think the biggest thing that I could spend a little bit of time talking about is the relationship that you have between your characters and Dulcie. Most of the time when someone is expressing some form of antagonism toward Dulcie, it feels a little forced. And I think that some of that has to do with the circumstances and family relations not necessarily playing into the moment. We know in the moment, like, we need to do something mean to Dulcie, but we don't necessarily have grounding in the backgrounds of character environment for that. And I'll use the expression of Jaren. He's supposed to be one of, like, the main lieutenants of the entire army, but he acts actually rather incompetently. His first instance of antagonizing Dulcie is not only out of nowhere, but it's out of nowhere not connected to anything. It's just kind of in the ether. We know that we have to attack her so Jaren can look like the bad guy, so it happens. I think it would really behoove you to examine the character relations more and find a more organic way to stitch these prejudices in. Veering off of that, I think sometimes the decisions that Hosteen makes, it doesn't necessarily bespeak his rank, his age, his title. Early on in the text, when someone says, "Hey, army dudes," he literally has, like, "Guys, get ready to fight, arrows out," and it was very much just a greeting called out. I didn't, as a reader, get any kind of threat, or I'd highlighted it as much in my notes, and there were a few instances like that when I was confused by he's a military general, good guy, bad guy, abusive father, not abusive father. He should be a little more strategic in this scenario. He should be a little smarter in this scenario. Bringing his youngest son, who literally pisses his pants when something scary happens. The father figure is literally a military general. He's not competent enough to know that his pissing his pants son's not ready to go for a long walk, much less about stuff like that. And I think if you're trying to play the trope where, like, these people really do suck, you're going to want to downplay the competence of the company that we are focusing on in this, because right now the image is that they're legendary, they're amazing, they're the best motherfuckers in the land, and all that I'm seeing from the leadership is just like their thumbs are up their asses, and it is entirely by a fluke. And I think if that's the way that you're really going, you should lean more strongly into that, because right now you're kind of riding a mid-ground. I think to step away from that for a minute, because I've kind of made enough of a point about the family relationships, Dulcie's evolution as a character of realizing she's utterly screwed and she's got to fight for herself, it's a little too turn of the coin for me. To hearken on to what Lance had said about Dulcie's naivete and thinking too positively, even when she's strung up on the tree, she's thinking nothing but like, I love my daddy's nice kind of thoughts. And then right at the very end, she gets the switch and realizes that she's in a bind. And immediately from there goes 150% carry. I guess everybody uses the carry notes because I even wrote those in my notes myself. She goes carry, which is like, it's fine. You wanted her to go carry. It's a great character choice, but I think there needs to be a little more escalation into that for it to make sense as a character choice, both in terms of emotion and in terms of her physical actions. We see her come into a new understanding of her superpowers in the scenario when she turns carry. Not only can I make magic arrows, but I can literally control them as well. And she barely experiments or teaches herself how to mess with any. I see you as a writer, you made the employee like, I'll give it a quick test run. Can I do that? It works. Full storm of arrows. Whoosh. And so she's instantly a god. And I think I think it needs to be a little more concretely examined. If you want her to end up at that true level of power by the end of that breakdown, we should lay the seeds earlier on for her to be kind of at least aware of the potential that she can do these things and to demonstrate that possibility. And in addition to that, I think when it goes down, just like the coming to an emotional understanding, ramping up the physical experimentation of trying to get the magic to work.
And that's
So that it has a little bit more. I'm over time anyway. I'll yield my time. That was the point.
No, that's a good point. All right, it's you, Dan.
Okay, well, that was excellent. Thank you guys so much. David, your point about the first page being Griffin, I especially appreciate that. I labored over that a lot. I labored over this whole thing a lot. Because actually in an earlier version of when I was just, selling this as a short story in a rejection email, I got a note saying that like, it was hard to like get their bearings as to like where she even was. Cause I kind of front loaded a lot of like the exposition about like how she melted down with the molten tear. So I'm glad that at least for you that that it opened in a compelling way and that it kind of, had some momentum. And Chris, I appreciate that about Jared. I mean, Jared, I will admit, is really, even more than the father. Like he is kind of like, he's like a plot device in the sense where it's like he's meant to be. He really exists because he has to be an asshole, he has to be an obvious asshole. I might want to actually demote him though, because I take your point. He is kind of like, he's kind of like the idiot, like nephew who has a rank, not because he's competent, but because, he's the nephew. But like maybe, make it sort of, but it does cut into the idea that like the lead flower company is so competent.
Well, are they though? They have magic arrows that never miss.
I was about to say, I noticed Liam's note in the comment. They are a little like, in large part because of Dulcie. Like they already had a great reputation, for just being like, just like a hyper skilled like mercenary outfit. But Hostin Bulwer, like he has a secret cheat code with his own daughter at that point, and they go to a whole other level. So they are a little bit overconfident in general. There is a little hubris there, but yeah. So, but basically, Jared exists. He wasn't in one of the earlier versions or iterations of this. He exists basically to for somebody to contrast. For Dulcie to contrast with her father, so that like there is some sort of like daylight between, okay, well my cousin's an asshole, my dad's a hard ass, but he really loves me. And of course her evidence for her father's love is very, it's contrived and it's built on lies that he's told her and lies that she's told herself over years and years. So I get that she seems naive. A lot of that is is an acknowledgement that she does feel, or has been made to feel fortunate that she didn't just get, you know, that she didn't die, you know, when she turned, or that her family didn't toss her out, or worse. And so it's like she's sort of been made to believe that she's like one of the lucky ones. And she's also just not really attuned much with like the world. She doesn't really get out that much. So it's sort of yeah. So I wanted to kind of make it, you know, I did kind of want it to be a little frustrating, like for the reader, like a certain point where it's like she keeps coming up with like rationalizations for why this isn't just her dad isn't the absolute worst, and why this isn't the absolute worst predicament. Because it's like, no, well, of course he wouldn't do that. Of course, like, no, this is gonna get fixed. But
I mean, if he's been telling her whole life while she was in the hole, he's the only one that loves her. I'm coming and giving you this food. Everyone else
Yeah.
is telling me not to.
right.
You know, all this other stuff. You know, the gaslighting there works, but I think it was, I can't remember if it was David or Lance, but someone was saying that her reaction to Henry then was kind of counterintuitive to her reaction to everybody else. Like, she was like a really
Oh.
good big sister, you know, like she was like, yeah, you know, kids will be kids, but like, how the fuck would she know? She's been in a hole, you know,
Right.
like she doesn't
You
know how
mean
kids are. Yeah.
when she's pissed that Henry outed her?
No, like the whole time. Like he does stuff
Oh.
throughout the story, and she's like kind of like comes up with reasons why a kid would do this or a kid would do that.
Yeah.
And then yeah, when he outs her, especially there, she's like,
Yeah. I
he
mean,
doesn't know what he's doing. He's a
yeah, he does
kid,
not
you
know
know.
what he's doing. He's, you know, he's not actually even particularly that bright, like even for a kid. He's not an idiot, but he's very naive too. He shouldn't be there. I mean, he shouldn't
Well,
fucking be.
right. Yeah, we
His
get that
dad's
because
trying to
we're
like quote unquote
all
make a man of him, and it's
yeah,
clearly a disaster.
right, and we're all adults that get that. But
Yeah.
like she's an adult that maybe shouldn't because she's never
Right.
been like a, you know, around kids.
Well, also, and again, I don't know if this. I mean, it's sort of weird. She does love him, but she does. I mean, she is like aside. I mean, I don't know if this came across, but she is a little envious of him too,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
because it's like he's getting this sort of chance, and but just before we sort of like just go back into the crease, I do want to kind of like sort of like cards on the table in terms of like what, because originally I was like, this is just a short story. It takes place in the same world as like my novel or whatever. Madros is actually in my novel. He is a weird dude. I take the point, David, about having a different accent, but kind of the thing with him is though is that, you know, like with the whole him wearing a mask, is that he's not really that savage. He's just like very strange. It's like he is sort of I don't know if like him sort of coming off as like sort of like, I mean, he like a lot of the stuff with him is sort of like pretense. But anyway, so he's in the book. Hassan's in the book. Like Dulcie has like a blink and you'll miss it moment in the book. So they're all around there. But the idea I had like a few months ago is like, could this be a book? The prologue, and I forgot who said this, but they were absolutely, they totally called it. After chapter 1 would take place like 20 years into the future. And in that time, not only has Dulcie and Henry survived, they've actually remade the whole realm. Henry is emperor, and everyone thinks that he is doing this. Like that, like there's all I haven't even really thought it all out, but like there's all kinds of just like flying metal death around like everywhere. It's like it's sort of it's like totally like sort of snowballed and like just exponentially. The in terms of the Bone Men, they actually kind of change their minds about that, and they actually hunt them down because I haven't totally like outlined or gamed this out, but the idea is that like immediately after this happens, like Henry and Dulcie feel like it's them against the world because the other parts of Lead Flower sort of are like, what the fuck happened? And so then they just deal with them. And then I don't even know what they do with their mom. Probably nothing good. And but like it's not so much that they're monsters. It's just sort of like they don't like they feel like they have to like make themselves safe.
No,
And it's like,
they're trauma victims with power.
right. But as a result of that,
Yeah.
like they end up just sort of taking things over. And the main character in the book is actually going to be like, I haven't decided if it's a man or woman, but like the descendant of one of the bone men, who like the one bone man who like did get away like eventually, and like
So the
and, like,
bone men are
knows-
not skeletons then.
no,
like
they're
people.
dudes that wear bones.
Yeah, different colored
okay.
bones.
Yeah. So and basically and this person is gonna have, I think, some magic or whatever. And part of the novel, or if it's a series, is to actually uncover the mystery of Dulcie, because nobody in the world alive even knows about her anymore. And it's just sort of she's sort of behind the scenes. And there is kind of like a redemption again for her. But then I'm also playing with the idea that maybe Henry does become kind of like his dad.
So that gave me a thought. So if your novel then is basically going to be about thinking everyone is against you, and what do you do when you have all the power and you think those kinds of things, and in this prologue is basically you getting Dulcie to that spot, and you need some way for her to realize it, that's not just all of a sudden at the end, so that's kind of unsatisfying. And you're going to have a descendant of one of these bone men as a main character. You could maybe consider having one of the bone men explaining to her throughout this meeting with Mandros, these people are not your friends, chick.
Right.
Like, you're in a wheelbarrow. You know that, right? Like you're in a wheelbarrow,
Tarp.
Yeah.
like under a tarp and shit, right? Like,
Yeah.
like they're gonna put you on that tree, and I'm not cool with that. And like, she can maybe not believe him at first, and then maybe they keep having conversations or something, and it builds up the relationship. But then now you've introduced the bone man's father, or something like that, so you have a relationship between the two of them, and also you have a way to get her there that's not just all of a sudden and now I'm there. But that's I'm not going to tell you how to write your book or whatever, but like that kind of
That's
buildup,
cool,
I
though.
think
I like that.
might work.
Another suggestion is, to tie themes together. If Dulcie basically just becomes legend, because I was under the impression that the rest of the story was going to be about her. But if she's basically legend, then to make the prologue and the themes within it significant for the rest of the story, then whatever bone man is descended from or related to the bone men who are in that prologue, then one of them should the one who eventually becomes the protagonist for the story should have a similar predicament in some thematic way to Dulcie's.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's okay. So that's something you're planning.
Yeah, I sort of just like I had this sort of visual of like the first chapter where it's like the like I think it's yeah, just like the son or daughter of the bowman, again I haven't decided, is sort of actually like their village is like visited by like Emperor Henry, and it's like again there's like all sorts of like flying metal death just like swooping around, like not even just arrows, just
Like Magneto's palace.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just sort of like, oh fuck, like they're and it's gonna be something where like because this descendant has like some sort of in the same way that like in the world that's introduced in the prologue, and also just again in my like existing novel, like people with quote unquote power or whatever are sort of like tried to like people try to sort of like exploit or like contain them. So I think that this descendant of the bowman is going to have some sort of like awesome power. I've not decided what. Might be dormant, but it's like something that would even threaten what Dulcie and Henry have created. And it's like, and Henry sort of like has a way of identifying these people, and he basically just sort of says something like, you can either like join me or like we're gonna just kill all of you or something like that.
Yeah.
But now here's a suggestion.
Again, I haven't really thought this through like on the level that I've
Yeah.
thought through, like the
But now
prologue.
here's a suggestion, if I may.
Yeah,
So,
please.
Dolce, so sounds like Dolce is something of a, what many people would view as a bad guy. It sounds like throughout the story, it may become evident that she uses her powers in ways that hurt a lot of people, even if she sees herself as the victim. Am I right in that?
Yeah, I mean, like the thing is that like it's it's a situation that what the main character, we'll just call him like son of Bone or whatever, like son of Bone Man or daughter of Bone Man, what they uncover and
Baby
what might
Bone.
be relayed through some backstory here and there is like in the time between the prologue and chapter 1, it's sort of like things just sort of snowball. It's like first Henry and Dulcie are trying to just survive the fallout of what happened at the canyon. That like, their father's other bannermen are kind of like, they find out there was a massacre and they just sort of figure it out because Dulcie's not really hiding anymore and they have to deal with them. And then other rival kingdoms get nervous. They investigate. They have to deal with them. And it's sort of like over time, I mean, like considering again, I know that it seems like kind of a leap in terms of what Dulcie was able to like realize what she could do. But if you can imagine
Okay,
over
but-
the years how that power might evolve,
Mhm.
like, it becomes like,
Well, yeah, can she kiss a catapult and throw a catapult at people? Like.
yeah, it's sort of just like
Right.
almost like use your imagination, or rather, I'll use my imagination. And I mean, duh. But
Right.
like, it's like within like a matter of like 2 decades, it's like it's not even that they've killed everyone in the realm. It's just that they've done enough to just make just everyone just abject surrender. And it's just sort of like it's like this is still like a quasi medieval setting. Like they don't have drones. Like they can't.
Yeah,
really
there's not a lot of people.
Um,
Now it's been
but-
about 15 minutes, and I don't want to cut everyone off, but
Uh,
I'm gonna do my moderator stick thing. So if you could make your suggestion, David, and then maybe we'll move
Sure,
on to
yeah.
the next story.
Yeah, so to do a quick thing. So the vibe I was starting to get is kind of like the TV show Arcane, the theme of the monsters that we create. So so my thought was that it would be cool if Dulce shows some of like the monster inside of her in her revenge in the prologue and takes out a whole bunch of the bone men as well, and that leads to your protagonist, having the trauma in his life push him forwards to use his powers to propel the remainder of the story. If you follow what I'm saying.
yeah.
Could work. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's
But
if you don't have any other major questions.
no,
Dan?
I was just gonna say that like the journey of the protagonist, just real short, is just to basically figure out how to survive, but then in doing so, like figure out like what really happened and maybe even like, come to some sort of peace with Dulcie and like an understanding. I don't know.
Word.
I've not worked that out, but yeah, thank you all.
All right, so the next one up is Lance. So the order of operations is, let me scroll back up. Gotta go way further than I thought I did. All right, it's gonna be me, Dan, David, Chris. Okay. So if someone could time me, that'd be cool. And I will start talking. So yeah, I actually ended up just picking like a little bit before you said to start critiquing, just to kind of like reinsert myself. So there's a few notes from before you told us to start critiquing in there, but just in general, as before, this has got a lot of girth to it. You got a lot of heft and weight. They're setting very well. Anytime people are talking about stuff, I can definitely tell that this is like a Tuesday for them. They know the terms, they know the places they go, they know the people that live in your setting, they know all the things. None of it feels like you're just kind of making stuff up. It all works together within itself. I especially appreciate that you seem to understand how underworld folk operate. There is no amount of money that will not solve a problem. Um, I appreciated that a lot. That he was just kind of like tossed things around, but there was like a specific moment where he whips out his coin purse, for lack of a better term,
Yeah.
and everyone kind of starts eyeballing him like, can we take him? And so I appreciate little bits like that that were good. There's a when you have the internal struggle like it hits hard, I thought, for sure. Like when he gets confronted with his old friend that used to warn him about the Ord, and he just kind of sees the betrayal in his eyes and face and everything and all that. It definitely hit really good. And your writing is really fun to read. There's a lot of good lines. There's like minor grammar and tense stuff that I highlighted, but that's just kind of the nature of this stuff. So I mean, there were good descriptions and interesting visuals and the whole nine. So good job on that too. Things that I thought that you could improve on, or the the girth is girthy sometimes. There's a few points at which and specifically one scene with the towman that went on a while. Like he was negotiating whether or not he got to pull a barge for like quite some time. And while that it was important how he gets into the city, I mean that could also that whole thing could have also been easily hand waviumed, because it like didn't directly affect how his emotional journey was going on it or something like that. Like there were plenty of moments when he had like little mini flashbacks that kind of bled into each other, which I'm not sure if I like or not, because sometimes it's a little confusing about what was happening. Like you're like, oh, all of a sudden I'm in a flashback, so that might need a clearer break. But there were points where when it was happening, you're like, okay, I can see how this relates to what's happening now. I can see how he doesn't want to be like he was then, and it's affecting him now, and it's affecting his overall arc. But the towman scene was definitely just a whole lot of dialogue and coin exchange. And while I like pieces of it, like I said, like one of my favorite moments is when they are all kind of eyeing him up, like, can we take him or not? I think that can get parsed down a little bit. You can, yeah, you can shrink that a little bit. So there's a few parts like that, where you could probably get to the point a little bit faster. And like when he's in the dark maker way itself, there's like a lady that doesn't want to have sex with him because screw you, which is that's funny, but like it was just kind of background noise and stuff like that. And at this point where you're kind of getting to and I'm glad I read a little bit ahead, because at this point you're getting to the point where you're like, get to the red inn. Jesus fucking Christ, how far is it to get to this red inn? So like I said, while the world is fun to read and it's interesting and stuff, the tension that he feels about the time that he's got to get there is definitely being circumvented or hamstrung by the amount of words in between that. So while time might not be passing, it feels like it is. So the tension that you build, because when you build it, it's really good, but when it gets built, it then kind of fades away as he has like daydream after daydream after daydream. So while I think a lot of those emotional beats are important, I definitely think you need to either pick the ones that are the most important, or just make them a little shorter, that kind of thing.
That's time, Liam.
That's time. Okay, yeah, that's basically all I had to say anyway. So other than that, like I said, a lot of good moments that I enjoyed. It's still fun to read, even if sometimes it gets a little lengthy, but that's fine. Thank you much.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, I'm up, right?
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, just to piggyback off of well, first of all, I just want to compliment just like the richness of the world, the level of thought and detail that's gone into it. I agree with Liam. Like there is a lot of just girth, a lot of thickness, and some not like sort of kind of circling like the same kind of like paragraphs or details or ideas where it's like a little bit like repetitive at times. You can certainly cut down, but there are some very like sort of interesting moments, like when he comes to what is it, like the shoulders of Akhnur or whatever. It was like a very striking image right there. It's like you've got the imagery, you've got the prose, you've got the lore, and it's all clicking, and it's really great. I think I agree with the Tomen scene. It does kind of, it drags. But in addition to it being long, it also just sort of feels like I don't really know why he's bugging out as much as he is. I get the whole doesn't want them to see the Ord, brand on the horse or whatever. I wasn't sure, but I had the idea that like, because he's so worried about being recognized, and I thought like, what if he actually does know who these guys are? Like, what if they were old friends or old enemies? And like he's in a disguise and he's like, oh shit, I hope that they don't just like look at me too long and realize that I'm this guy. Because it's like I feel like it's like we're supposed to feel this tension, but it's not. And maybe you try to establish it by kind of dragging out it, but it's sort of like nothing really happens. It's like just like chill out, man. Like just a bunch of like idiot Tomen. Just it's okay. Just give him some money. But it's like, what if like at least one or two of them were like, oh shit, like I went to like barge school with them or whatever, like and they actually know me. Similarly, when he passes Jan's house, I felt like it was sort of I like that he met him, but the circumstances in which he met him just felt too random. It's like, all right, well, I'm on a mission, but let me just kind of have like a whimsical kind of moment where it's like oh look, there's like a thing of and like sugar. I used to have this. Oh look, there's the guy. I was thinking maybe instead of that, like he actually is seeking out this guy for whatever reason. Like he's like, okay, this guy can help me. And so that when this guy turns on him and his son or whatever turns on him, it feels like a real bitter sting, because otherwise it just feels a little bit random. Like he's on the way somewhere. Oh, like let me drop in actually. Like, so, and then just more generally, I think that Menno, sometimes I feel like I understand his objective, but I don't always like understand like his motives and desires. It feels like a lot of times you kind of touch vaguely on his emotions. He seems a little blurry. Sometimes you just kind of like name emotions like uncertainty, fear, or whatever. It's like, I just want more specific grounding. An example of a really great example of where you do this though, is when he has that memory about Donkey's death and Tessa. And that part really rings true for me, like, because it's like a very specific kind of childlike thing where it's like you imagine that you're somewhere else, and then later he goes there in real life. So that was great. Just more of that stuff, or if not more of it, then just less of the other parts where it's sort of like where we're just kind of vague booking about like kind of like, oh, like this feels whatever. Like I cited examples where it was like I felt like I couldn't really track his emotions. And I think that yeah, it's like you've got a lot of great details about the city. I did wonder sometimes when he was racing around in it though, it actually did feel kind of empty at times. Like just feel like there should have been more people around actually. But I think that's actually it. I don't know if I'm about to run out of time or not.
30 seconds.
I've got
just about 30. Yep. But I mean, if you want to relinquish it, you can.
I yield my time.
Word.
Right,
And that's David.
Okay. All right. So part 3 of the Darkmaker's Way. So writing is as usual strong. World building is fantastic. Of course, as you know, Lance, there are times you go a little too much into the world building, but there are certain there were certain key points where I just went wow, particularly like when he's counting the money to the Tomen, the lingo, that colloquial, it's like 8-bit to 16 or whatever it was that you use, the language. Just it just spoke of like so much depth. I was very impressed by that, and there were a couple other moments like that throughout as well. but again, there are certain parts where you go you go off on tangents on the world building that don't seem to hold relevance to the character or the story. I note that in the notes I sent you. Um, but at this point, though, I'm kind of curious what sort of story you're going for, because in your heading, you list the genre as chase thriller, and this does not feel like a thriller at all. Yeah, yeah. So okay, you're shaking your head. So
Yeah,
maybe yeah, so maybe that description needs to be changed, because obviously this story has far more emphasis on theme, contemplation. It's far more of a contemplative kind of story, and far less emphasis on action, which is great. I mean, I love the contemplative feel of it. I love the atmospheric focus on the character development, who Menno is, what's the internal journey that he's going on. I think that's great. But you do want to get more of a sense of urgency in his mission, because like I'll, I break from Liam and Dan that the length of the whole thing with the Tomen didn't bother me. What really stood out to me, though, in an unfortunately negative way, was once he gets to the wharf and he's standing there, he's waiting for his chance to get away. He's feeling the pressure of time there, and that's great. That made me feel like, oh God, he's got to get to the Red District fast. What's he going to do here? And then he gets the chance to get away, and from there he just goes on sightseeing. There's no sense of urgency after that point, and I feel like you can keep the sense of deep theme and contemplation, while also ensuring that your character and therefore your reader feels that pressure of him running out of time to get to the Red Sister Inn. So yeah, make sure I think like because of the purpose of his story in rediscovering who he is through rediscovering where he came from. It's necessary to have these quick dalliances of I remember that candy that I used to use, and I remember this alleyway that I used to hide down. That's fine, but it just needs to be more brief, I feel, and also with the ever present feeling of like, I got to get to this place quick. I'm running out of time. Uh, and also the Dark Maker's Way. So so we're told all this stuff about the Dark Maker's Way. It's hyped for us. It's built for us. He finally gets to it, and it feels just like any other part of the city. I I was expecting it to be like crime ridden, like you know STD ridden prostitutes and cutthroats and God knows what else, and just like slithering all over the place. But yeah, it seemed just like any other part of this city. And there were also like just some passages that were a bit confusing. Like I think at one point he goes into the Dark Maker's Way, then he exits, then he goes back. I couldn't tell when he exited and then went back in. And that's in part because I don't see any distinction between that area of the city and the rest of it. Um, uh,
It's about 30 seconds.
and that's I'm trying to think of like what else. That's essentially what I wanted to say. Um,
Yeah, I mean, we can
I'll
bring
yield
up
my
stuff
time.
in the back and forth if you want. Yeah.
I'll yield the rest of my time.
All right, cool. And
That's
that's on
great.
to Chris then.
Cool. I will jump right into it. I pulled double duty this round because I couldn't attend last session for your second passage. Most of my notes are all highlighted. You can see them pretty easy. The one thing that I will address, it's kind of hard to tell when section 2 starts and section 3 begins. So if it is section 3, my bad. He's waiting for the barge and he maybe nods off, but there's a flashback sequence. And it's one example of a flashback sequence. I believe there's more than one in your text so far, but it was very disjointed and difficult to tell what time state we were in, how we had suddenly slipped into the past story and back into the present. I would just recommend in those instances when you have any kind of flashback, check your transitions, make sure you're crisp and such so that that kind of thing will work. You've mentioned that in your top explanation that it was all taking place during one day with no breaks. I'm curious, other than the challenge of it, your creative intent to do it without any breaks at all, because it could potentially help you to have some time, even in the instances of the past tense break, not even necessarily a chapter break, new page, but at least a line break or something to give an easier visual to, okay, we're in a different time zone now. Moving on, I ditto most of the big things that people have said. The towboat sequence I was very confused by. Maybe I just did not do a good enough reading of early stages, but I don't for the life of me understand why they were standing in the water towing, and then they were standing in the water towing while dudes in boats with poles were passing them. Stuff like that about that, and then they got to the end and he bribed them and it was all fine anyway because he, like, so why didn't he just go through the water and bribe them, that in those elements, that sequence have really confused me, and I would definitely agree, if you did choose to preserve it, power to you. I would definitely either intensify the danger or cut down the instance when they get into the city and they're just held up for a half an hour. Because in so many words, you literally describe it. Menno was waiting. He got angry with waiting, and he waited some more. The guys told him, "Stop being angry that you're waiting," and then he left. And yeah, I do that stuff sometimes like that too. And I will also agree that when he ends up rendezvousing with his friend Jan from the past, you did a good setup. Preceding that to explain the emotional connection that we're about to experience and the stakes that are going to be happening. I think it was a little too randomized. And I think that there is a way that you can organically make them run into each other that isn't, ooh, piece of candy, and Menno stops to have a piece of candy, which in itself, it's a very powerful character building from his past to be like, this was a part of my childhood, etc., etc. But as an adult, as an Ord who is supposedly like a Sith Lord sounding dude, like it's kind of incongruous the way that Menno is distracted so quickly and easily by said candy object, and those kinds of things happens for some of the exposition transitions that we see, especially when he hits the Dark Acre's way. My favorite bit of text that is probably one of the most unnecessary is you talk about stews for 2 paragraphs, and they sound like the most delicious stews that don't matter at all. I want to taste that stew, but if you find a way to keep that, that'd be beautiful. Anyway, so the again about the Darkmaker's Way, I really, just like everyone else, was expecting some kind of more shebang about it. We've kept hearing all this talk about, oh, don't fuck with the Darkmaker's man. It's scary business in there. And maybe it's because it's not nighttime yet that it's not an issue at all. But it's literally, you've described it like you got some sad, lonely dudes in the apartment next door. You got the stew kitchen and this. Yeah, sure, there's a horror, but you ain't bothering nobody. Everybody's just chilling. It's a city. You want to light one up, bro? I think that it either needs to be more. Thank you. It either needs to be more emotionally gripping for Menno, because the way that you're portraying it right now, it's because of his past life that he feels so strongly about the Darkmaker's Way, whereas we as the reader so far have come to believe that it's just a really sketchy alley. If it had more to do with Menno's pains in the past, I think we should see the pains rather than just the Menno, like, that stew was great. That's where I'll stop.
All right, and then it's on to Lance. Questions, comments, concerns.
Oh, yes,
Stew
right.
recipes.
Me. The design for this is that he joined the order when he was a kid. He has come to a crisis. He doubts his choice, and through misadventure, he's forced to walk through his past. That's the structure, which is why it just takes place in one afternoon. He has to figure out some way to get in there. He runs into these people. Fine. I can't remember whether or not it's in this part or the next part. I was feverishly trying to find it, but I describe the Darkmaker's Way as a place that it doesn't exist on a map. It totally exists in people's minds. And it's scary for some people and it's home for other people. It all depends on how you view this particular area,
Oh,
which is
so it's the hood.
full of shops that have materials for other gods, for foreigners. It's like scary in that way, right? And that I know I need to get better at. Yeah, this should be a slow burn, not a thriller. I finally just realized that I was trying to make it something that wasn't really, and it really is. He's going back through his life, and the next scenes will be the worst 4 days of his life. When he gets approached by the order, when his best friend gets gone, when somebody gets killed because of him, and he has to use his knowledge of the Dark Maker's way, which is why he touches Equal all the time. And then he joins the order. And it all revolves around this one space that he's the novella house, which he's constantly doesn't want to go to, because that was like, that's what made him, and he doesn't want to go there again. So that's the general thing. And then once he goes there, he has to come to terms with things. Then he makes it to the Red Sister there to have the shit hit the fan, where everything gets really bad. So it starts off slow and it builds and builds, and there's a couple fights, and then it gets bigger and bigger. And then when he finally thinks he's safe, he's in the worst possible place he could be. So that's the arc it's taking. Towpath, yeah. I just, I had fun with that.
It was clearly writer syndrome there. Yeah. Like you had fun. Yep.
Yeah.
Got carried
I
away
grew
by the
up in
towboat.
Ohio. I used to go to the Erie Canal. I used to stand on those towpaths and watch the guys, haul those things up.
I'm from Buffalo. I have to have I have a mule. Her name is Sal song memorized. It's required in Buffalo.
That had to have been from some personal experience. You had too much like familiar detail about the barge process and towing and all.
Yeah, and I definitely, because a lot of this I realize is okay when I first conceived it. Okay, yeah, this is his past. He has to touch it, but no, he doesn't have to touch that particular part of his past. He has to touch the parts of his past that matter. And that's what I'm going to be working on next, which was all based on work I did with Story Genius, where I went back to the very, very important moments that happened to him, and they all revolve around this one place, the novella house. And so this is going to probably shrink a lot.
Yeah.
Just
I mean, that said, I really liked, I think it was Dan's suggestion of like, what if he knows these people?
Well, no, that is really a good idea. Because he knows Giannis in the at the wharf, and he even knows the guy who tries to attack him, right? So why wouldn't he know this dude? So yeah, at least one person there, and does his disguise work? Is he not really himself enough?
Yeah,
Right.
because then that ties into the theme of who is he? Because he's so good at fooling them who he grew up with. He's like, am I even that person anymore? I like that.
Yeah, exactly. So that works exceptionally well. And then when he gets to the thing, somebody does recognize him, even though he is disguised. So he fools one group of people, he fails with the other one. The Maddie crystal. I gotta work on that.
Something that I thought was interesting, and I don't know if it was intentional or not. If it was intentional, then I kind of like it. But it's where, so he's disguised. He's an Ord disguised as a pilgrim.
Yes.
Right. So he goes to Jan's son, whoever, is like, "Oh, you filthy Ord," and then like a whole like gang of like longshoremen just start chasing him. And then later, like not that much later, somebody, the prostitute, sees him for his disguise and is like, "You filthy pilgrim, I'm not going to kiss you." And I kind of chuckled, because it was just sort of like, it's like whether he's being like seen for who he really is or whether he's fooling someone. It's like it's like people hate orgs and they hate pilgrims, and it's just sort of
Ain't the bad disguise.
it's kind of a moment
Yeah,
of
you picked the
comedy for
wrong
me, where
one.
it's like,
Should have been a Toman.
yeah,
Well,
it's
you
like,
know.
oh well, at least disguise is working. I mean, this person hates me
That's
too.
true.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just but yeah, it's just like sort of a metaphor. It's sort of like, these disguises, it's like hiding from like his past and like delaying this inevitable confrontation where he has to sort of shed all kind of pretenses. I like that. But yeah, I mean, it's like when I saw that thing at what other the subgenre like chase thriller, I mean, it's like, other than just him fleeing the longshoremen, and honestly, I wasn't really that worried about the longshoremen. Like, it's like, that he was on a horse, right? That they weren't going to chase him more than like a block and a half.
Right.
But yeah, to me, it just sort of is like, yeah, like even like the first chapter that I read, it was just like, okay, like this guy totally doesn't want to deal with his past, and he therefore totally has to deal with it, which is sort of, which is a great premise. So
Lance, I have a question.
Yeah.
How does the black goat fit into everything? Because it's so he's on this journey rediscovering who he is. It seems to me like he's he's coming to the realization that he's been running from who he is, and discovering that in coming back to his hometown, he's discovering his true identity. But at the same time, it looks like he's running from this identity of the black goat, which seems to also be who he was in his hometown. So at this point, I'm not sure if that whole black goat persona is contradictory to the story that you're trying to tell, or if it's going to fit in a way that I haven't seen yet.
Right.
Could you tell us about that? Or do you want that to be a surprise?
It was a nickname that he got. And one of the worst things that ever happened to him in his life was the fact that he had to use the knowledge that gave him that name, the Blackmaker's Way, to take a friend's body and throw it into the river so that no one knew. So that's one aspect of it. That's the part that's going to come up, which is why he doesn't like killing anyone, because he was approached by the order. His best friend gets taken because she's a seer. There's a confrontation about that. He goes back to the novella house the next day. This little kid who really looks up to him, wants to talk to him, he blows him off. This other guy insults the Menno. The little kid decides to get into a fight with him to defend him. And that little kid gets killed. But they have to take the body and make it go away, or else their little clubhouse here is going to be busted where they're doing all this stuff. So he is the black goat, the guy who knows everything about the Blackmaker's Way, knows everything, has to hide the body. But he doesn't allow the guy who kills the kid to break the Huicotl. So he saved that. That's the one good thing that he did. So he's totally full of guilt. He lost his power in front of all the people who used to admire him as the black goat. And that's what forces him to go off to join the order. So now he has to go back and essentially relive all those parts that he's been avoiding. He hates going to this place.
Yeah, that would help the Dark Maker's Way. If I don't know like how you do it, but if he like thinks about dragging a kid's body through there.
That's a scene that's coming up. It's a full blown scene, including him blowing the kid off, the kid looking hurt, the other guy trying to use it to his advantage, the little kid challenging him, fighting on the stairs, which they're never allowed to do because it's dangerous, the kid falling off, breaking his neck, hiding it from the parents. And he says, you know what, I can't be here anymore.
Right.
I'm no longer who I used to be. I've been, nobody respects me. I'm no longer the dark stick master. I'm no longer the black goat. I can't stay here. My father wants me to turn into a shopkeeper. I'm taking the order's offer. And then they send him on this mission to kill somebody who he doesn't want to do, because he already killed that one kid effectively. So it does tie in tighter, but there is an awful lot of stuff where I need to have that for a later book. You know, he has somebody to talk to, and he can go, oh yeah, I remember these guys. These guys are great, you know, that sort of stuff. Remove that, put the stuff that's more speaking to the exact worst 4 days of his life that made him become an Ord, which is what he is now doubting. And that's the circle.
Word.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
And also, black goats, they're a supernatural being, essentially, that exists on a particular mountain where the Darkmaker, who is a god, who is one of the two gods who made the swords that the 10 used to castrate the sky god. So it ties in with origin stories and stuff. So it's deep that way as well.
You've really thought this through.
Yeah, or
Yeah,
he was.
a lot of world building, man. Yeah, the
Yeah,
world is
I had
there.
a blast. Spent way long on it. I don't want to give it up, but I have to.
I think it would be helpful for you, especially in these early parts of experiencing the Darkmaker's way, especially with what you've just brought up about the huge back lore about like how he got the name the Black Goat. So far in the story, you've only really referenced like that's how you got the name Black Goat half of one time, and it didn't have the level of detail or precision that you had just described. And I think to get the kind of energy about the Darkmaker's way, the nature of the Darkmaker's way, the duality of it, the good, the bad, what you make of it, and Menno's own conflicted relationship is if you try to parse out some of those backstory allusions into these descriptions that you've got set up. If you truncated down the exposition and then tagged that thematically into one of these mythical origin story bits, it could help you heighten everything.
That's
Maybe he liked one type of stew, and the kid that he got killed liked the other type of stew. You know,
Like
he can think about.
Did you
way.
make the stew up, or was that like a family recipe stew or something?
Oh no, I just made that up.
Man.
The bread that goes with it, though, I read about in Atlas Obscura, the pine bark bread.
Admit it, you're just a food blogger. Giving us a long story to give us the recipe. Oh, cool, man. Is there yeah, we've been going a little bit now. Is there anything else, or do you feel like you got what you need?
I think I have a really good idea of what I need to do. If anybody has any last thoughts about what they think I need to do, knock it out. I'm love to hear it. I mean, so far I've got lots of ideas.
I think we've reamed you pretty good. If no one's got any objections, let's move on to Chris. I see you yawning over there, and I know you get tired. So let's move on to Chris before we lose you. And I will kick it off first. Thanks again, Lance, for submitting.
Yes.
And let me get over to where I have my Google Doc with the notes. Okay, somebody time me. All right. So, much like you let Lance know, or no, Dan know that this is some of the most polished work you've seen. This is probably some of the most polished work I've seen from you. So that's great. I really liked this piece a lot. I thought that you really kind of nailed that balance of things that are in the world that you need to know about and why it matters to the main character. You know, it was almost like a formula. Every time someone mentioned something that you need to know about, like the 5 fingers rule, or the 4 fingered rule, or whichever ones they were, whichever rules they were, immediately afterwards there was a reason why May was affected by it. Whether it was the first one where they're talking about how these drives work, and May is like, my dad made this, fuck. Like, I'm intrinsically tied to this, for good or ill. It was a good moment there that, as the start of another book. If you hadn't picked up the other book and read it, you could pick this one up. And now I know why May is, so invested in this particular thing. And even if you have picked up the first book, it's a great reminder of why May is specifically invested in this thing. So I thought it worked, on a couple different levels there. And then when, the cadets getting punched in the face to demonstrate the 5-finger death punch rule, she has a visceral reaction. Everyone has a visceral reaction to that because, that could be me. And I don't like getting punched. And even the sergeant had a reaction to it. Like, up until that point, he was, Sergeant Slaughter. He was there to like be a drill sergeant, and then all of a sudden he has this turnkey moment where, oh no, he's a human. He knows that he's gonna have to do this thing to demonstrate a point, but he's not super happy about it. And I thought that was, it was really good that you were showing how all of these people were interacting with this world and why everything mattered. It's a really roundabout, long way of saying that. But great job on that. So your specific questions with the warblers, the AI text exchange bits. I agree. I do think that you probably need to do some regular convention that denotes two different things speaking when they're super similar. Either I was thinking maybe you start off calling them Warbler 115, Warbler 307, and then maybe eventually just start calling them by their designations. So that you're not, because if you start each one with Warbler such and such, like your eye immediately thinks, okay, which Warbler is it? And then, you have to kind of orient yourself a little bit. Or, just using italicized versus not italicized. Like maybe the main hub one that's sending out the signals is, one type of text, and then all of the little minion ones are a different type of text. So you know that it's the main control one versus the other ones. But I do agree, you probably want to differentiate that a little bit. As far as their actual conversation, though, I got it. It made sense, and I thought it was just enough time of showing how these things are manipulating everything, and then everything goes sideways, and you're like, shit, what the heck takes out the thing that takes out everybody else? So it was a good, oh my god, what I want to find out what killed these satellites of doom moment. So that was good. Did you nail the Fleming's left hand, right hand rules? I thought so. So I'm kind of your target audience, I think. I'm a hard sci-fi fan, among other ones. I've read, Molten God's Eye. I've read a lot of, other hard sci-fi authors, where, there's a lot of science, Ringworld, all that jazz. So reading how the science works and what it does is kind of par for the course. As far as that's concerned, I thought you did as good a job as anyone else usually does in explaining how their rule of the science is going to work. And I was already kind of picturing ways that they're probably going to get really stupid with the technology in very dangerous circumstances. Never tell me the odds type stuff. So I thought that was fine. With the as a starting place, yeah, I think I mentioned this before. I think it was a good starting place. You dump us right into a moment where there's tension because something bad happened. The military is probably going to have to get involved. And oh, look, our main character is starting in the military. Isn't that just great for them? So yeah, I thought that did well as well. Since this is such a rough draft, I just kind of wanted to tell you my impressions. I don't really have a lot of criticism about what you need to change or whatever, because you're going to change a lot of stuff. So there's some comments or some notes in the comments. So if you need to really kind of overhaul it, you can, but I don't really see the need just as of yet. Good job, man. I liked it a lot, and I'll relinquish whatever time I have left. And that moves it on to Dan.
All right, cool. So I'm gonna anti-ditto a little bit, but I think a lot of that might be because in the same way that Liam is like, he might be like like an ideal reader or like a good reader. I might not be in terms of the hard sci-fi stuff. So I might be a little like, through that lens, that might be part of it. But like, so I'm pretty like reliably floored by like, you know, how much like the whole left hand, right hand, whatever, like, you know, just like sci-fi mumbo jump, like just the way this guy talks about it. I don't know if this is hard sci-fi, soft sci-fi. It sounds really, really cool. And so I tip my hat to like how much detail you're putting into it. I just think that there's a lot of it, of just a lot of this kind of explaining and this kind of chalk and talk kind of thing, which I mean, again, just for me as a reader, because it pulled me out of it a bit. I kind of glazed over it, like, because it's hard, because it's like, I'm not really a student in this class. Like, it's like May needs to know about it. Poor like Cadet Wrigley needs to know about it. I mean, God help him. But I don't need to know all of this stuff. So I think you could, again, like, this is a rough draft, so it's like I totally get it. It's better to, you know, spill out more than less, so you have more to work with. But you could condense some of that and kind of get right to the meat of it, where May is called up, you know, to the test. She aces it or whatever. Wrigley does a little bit worse, and whatever happens to him happens to him. And I liked all that. But just kind of, you know, you don't need so much explanation right away. Because bear in mind, you're going to have a whole book to sort of bear these things out. Like, if you like, don't worry about if you're nailing what demonstrating moving through space is like here. Like, you can let the reader actually see characters do this later, you know, like, or, you know, if you want to spice it up, maybe the drill sergeant could like do some sort of show a computer simulation to them, or even some sort of like live action crash dummy thing or whatever. There's more you could do there, but again, like, you know, in terms of interesting question that you had about how this works as a sequel, I didn't get a lot of catch up or exposition for this chapter, and I think that that's okay. That you don't have to just fill us in on, you know, everyone going on, but I think that what didn't make sense to me is that the only thing this drill sergeant had to say about May was that she's Thomas Zhang's daughter. That made sense in book one. But at this point, May's own reputation should precede her. She led a mining revolt. Like, that had to have made some headlines. Like, so it's like she should come into this with a little bit of her own legend. It's fine to mention Thomas, but I think May's own track record should kind of, you know, be acknowledged. And the Warbler stuff, I thought it was cool, honestly. It was like for what it was, I understood it. You know, you kind of, in this sort of quirky way, like robotic way, show all these kind of calamities, you know, in the world, and even interstellar. But I would just say, one thing about the drill sergeant, like, just something to think about. You know, your first book did have a lot of these kind of grizzled shit kicker, like take no prisoners authority types. And I do take Liam's point that the drill sergeant did kind of flinch a bit towards the end, but just something to, like, you know, you might want to mix it up a little bit, and have some of these guys be like a little gentler, or, you know, or just or more, you know, undermining in more subtle ways. Just something to think about. But yeah, I mean, I think you've got a great start. You know, again, like some of the hard sci-fi stuff, like, you know, as is being explained, like maybe like a different reader is like, it like would be like super into like learning this all now and like visualizing how it works. I'm not really like personally built for that. So I mean, I would have liked to just seen a little bit more of like how is this filtering through May? And it's like, what if anything is she thinking or feeling coming into this book from the first one? But I think, you know,
30
you
seconds.
got a good start. And the one part you said woof that was really bad, I actually liked that chapter, that paragraph, and I pointed that out. So, you know, don't sell yourself short. And yeah, that's good for me, I think.
All right.
How you?
Okay, so yeah, I'm not much of a hard sci-fi reader myself. You know, I just you know, I just for no reason other than I simply haven't gotten around to reading a hard sci-fi since reading Michael Crichton when I was in high school. So it's been quite a while for me since I've read in that genre. So I'm not I don't know how valuable my feedback is going to be since I'm not used to seeing that. But I mean, the main thing that that I would think and from the little bit that I remember of reading Jurassic Park, for example, is that I think that you front load too much hard technical science at the expense of plot and character motivation. So after reading this chapter, I have no idea what the story is going to be about. I have no idea what May's goals are. Why is she in the military? What is she trying to do? What are the dangers that she is likely to face? I remember, and I was just again, like the little bit I remember of reading other hard sci-fi. I remember in Jurassic Park, it starts with the aftermath of a velociraptor attack, and we don't get the hard technical stuff about the DNA splicing until like quarter into the book or so. I don't know if your target audience is solely hard sci-fi people, hard sci-fi readers, then maybe it's less of an issue. But if you're trying to reach a wider audience, you really need to get more, have more about May's goals, her and motivations, and give the reader a feel of what the plot is going to be, what danger she's going to face, with the technical stuff more summarized, as opposed to getting really into the weeds with it. I understand you really want to give the reader a sense of this left hand right hand concept, and the hard sci-fi stuff does sound cool, don't get me wrong. The detail you go into about I don't even know how to pronounce it, the type of engine and everything, and the pyrite batteries and all that, it all sounds like cool cutting edge sci-fi stuff. But there's so many technical terms thrown out so rapidly. I really got lost. At the expense of sounding dumb. I just like my mind went blank multiple times. And I feel like even with all the explanation, I did not get an idea of what the left hand right hand thing was. I still really not sure I do. I had no idea even that what you were talking about was a hand gesture controlled spaceship until the very end. So I think if it's really important for your story to get across what this left hand right hand thing is right off the bat, then I think more demonstration and less explanation will go a long way. So that was my main thing with the main body of the chapter. Now, as far as the warbler thing, I mean that could definitely work, and especially that sets up intrigue. That we have somebody being arrested for possible treason. It all sounds very mysterious. Sounds like the beginning of a good Tom Clancy novel. But then you have kind of this chunk in the middle of it of climate, I'm going to talk about the climate, droughts, things like that. That kind of breaks up that intrigue. And I think if certain things like droughts and problems with the weather are important to the story, that can be that can be established through the action, through the narrative later on. I would I would keep, for the warbler thing, I would just keep the focus on this intriguing bit about potential military conflict that's brewing. I think if there was anything else.
Okay, about 30 seconds.
Okay, one semi-minor thing that just kind of irks me. So all the people who are in this training session seem like raw recruits.
Oh, crap, we lost him.
Oh, yep. Yeah, well, they were raw recruits. Fuck.
Yeah. Raw recruits. We'll give him back his 15 seconds if he comes back.
Sure.
All right. Well.
So that moves on to Lance.
Yes, me. Yes, I my first questions came to the structure, and I put this in the notes that does the book actually start off with these definitions? So like you go to Amazon and you click on read, look inside, and all you get are definitions. That's going to say, guess what? You need science nerds are the only people who are going to really read this. And there's a lot of people just going to No. Right. I mean, for me, I'm not exactly sure I'd read a book that starts off with long technical definitions. But then again, maybe that is the audience you're looking for. It's just a thought on that. The warblers, the definition that I got, I kind of got the impression that it was more of a general news gathering network. It just like moved news around. But no, excuse me. That's what it, in my mind, I had it as a network of satellites gathering intel. Photos, videos, things that they could collect and they shared amongst themselves. And yet it reports stuff from the ground as if it has agents on the ground, as if it's integrating a whole system. It's not just the people that are up on top. That has to do with the definition that was left into my brain after reading it. And sure, main unit has its own signifier, outgoing ping. The others have nothing. Maybe that's good enough. Somebody else said that just having the numbers or just some other signifier might also work with that. Keep it smooth, keep it simple, so that we're not trying to figure out who's who, because it really doesn't matter this satellite or that satellite, just a satellite. So on that level. Now you say, do you have a good sense of moving through space means? I don't really get the impression that they really talked about it. It was mostly, well, use this rule and that rule, but there isn't any sense of, when she does make a comment that, yeah, the grav thing that I'm going to have to do now is horrible, have to go through the thing, but there's no sense of actually being in a simulator or being in that situation. It doesn't necessarily matter, just answers that particular question. Right hand, left hand rule, I kind of didn't get. And it'd be really easy, because May got it, to have some recruit walk up and go, you know what? Could you explain to me in like simple language, and have her explain it again more simply, rather than having it as the sergeant belting it out, making sure that the people are going to get it. And if they don't, well, they're going to suffer. So that's one approach to it. Yeah, Karma space is dangerous. What was my comment here? So, oh yeah, some of these things might be able to be tackled later. I know some other people said that. So there's ditto on that. They can have simulators, exercises, what have you. They can actually do the changes in gravity. Perhaps go through Karman space in a simulator and have it be on this level, that level. And then therefore it doesn't have to be a definition in the front. It's, oh yeah, the instructor tells her, this is where we're going next, or whomever it is. Let's see. As for direct sequel, I didn't know it was one. I just thought this went back to this maybe a bit of a prequel, or maybe her backstory, because in this one, I kind of got a sense of what she was doing. Whereas in the previous one, I had no idea what Bay was doing, where she was. I didn't get why she was there. Here, sure, I got it. Okay, she's coming back to prove something. The thing about her backstory is you might want to move it because it's in the middle of the left-hand rule talk. So she's in the middle, there's the sergeant going over this really important thing, and then she just drifts off. And she gets, it's important backstory, but maybe someplace else. Right, you did that. The transcript could work. I like the geopolitical
30
events.
seconds.
30 seconds? All right. Question about, because one of the themes of the story seems to be about human beings giving over the defense and all the really important decisions on the world over to AI. They get to decide when war starts and when war doesn't. They get to decide all these sorts of things. Like human beings are completely cut out of governing their own planet. That's what I got out of the warblers. I'm not sure if that's what's intended, but that's kind of what I was getting the sense of.
And that's time.
Very good. Awesome.
It's another conspiracy. The AIs took the power, but they never asked for the power.
So yeah, that sounded like a joke, David, but did you actually have one more comment that you wanted to make? Yeah, it was about recruits. You got cut
Yeah,
off.
everyone seemed like a new recruit, and you died.
Yeah, I just commented that it's a minor thing. I'm going to send it to you in the
Oh,
notes on your piece anyway. But yeah,
for-
I'll say it quickly anyway. So basically, in real life, as I was in the army, when people are at that stage where it looks like they're training to fly a very advanced state of the art war machine. At that point, soldiers have already gone through basic training. They're already fairly experienced. They've passed numerous tests and all that. So in real life, the instructors they're still yelling at them. They're still like very strict and everything, but they're much more respectful than drill sergeants and the recruits. They're not recruits anymore. They have a lot more confidence. They know a lot more of the game. So they're not like nervous. It's like they're terrified, like and all that. Obviously, this is your world. You shape it like you want and everything. But if you were going for kind of like a realism kind of field there, then that's something to consider. I was also thinking it's also possible that they all raw recruits, and this is the drill sergeant telling them that one day you'll get to this level where you'll be flying these things, and here's what you're going to experience. This is what you're boning up to learn how to do. And so if that's what you're going for, then it's all fine.
Right. It was good. That's a good note. It's good to consider. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, now
So-
it's Chris question time.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I wanted to do, rather than a traditional question, let's give ourselves an exercise here, because right now it seems like a 1 out of 4 was on the side of yeah, the left hand and the right hand rules. So forget the book, forget the story. If it shouldn't happen there, this or that, whatever. I'm just gonna try and see whether with y'all I can make the left and right hand rules make sense. The real left and right hand rules have to do with electrostatic propulsion. Usually electrical engineers determine where a particle or bullshit is going, and this is a cheat sheet that they use to think, calculating directions and force of momentum. So the way, I'm not going to bother doing like the actual rule, there's slight deviations for the book. Me trying to teach you guys, your left hand, digits up, your forward momentum. Okay? Now you keep the index finger up, your other digits curled downward, rotational torque. That's representative of the turning factor for your ship. Thumb out. Catalytic strike or catalytic burst, whatever writing term you want to put it, but that is the molybdenum drives 360-degree spherical axis that can force propulsion anywhere in your 3D grid. So using these in combination allows you to make a path for how your ship is going to travel with all of these dimensions to be able to consider in your kooky space flight mode. So that is the left-hand rule, in the sense that, okay, first finger, torque, thumb, shooting that way. And that's how a pilot, they quick check their constellations, they go and look at that, and they try to make it work. And so as a military salute almost, they would do the left-hand rule with a swoosh. So having heard that before we even get to the right-hand rule, is this still nonsensical to you guys?
Okay, so this is direction, this is propulsion. These kind of don't matter.
No, direction, rotation, independent burst.
Okay, independent burst is what?
Independent burst is, let's say that you can put a thruster anywhere on your body and you're running on a track, so you're running down that curve, and then suddenly someone comes at you on the side, so you want to dodge them. So you maybe side jaunt to get out of the way. You're still maintaining your momentum along that curve, but you also propel yourself to the side in a maneuver.
Yeah, if you've watched The Expanse at all, maybe
Yeah.
they have like rockets on the other sides of their ship. So if in space you need to move in a direction, all you need is to give a little bit of force, and you'll go in that direction.
Mhm.
But when you're already moving in a direction with enough force, that just bumps you, like he said. Like you have to have more force to first stop you from going in that direction, and then you apply more force. So if you just have a little bit of force, it like arcs you instead of
Right.
you just moving to the side. So it's kind of like that. At least that's what I was getting from it. Am I getting it, Sarge?
Yes,
Do I
and
get punched or?
to continue with it with the thumb position, it you know the hand, it's just representational. Your movements aren't always exactly like the hand. You know what I mean? Your thumb strike, it can come from above, it can come from below to the side. That's the function of that thing. And but
Right. Like if you're
as
going
a
this way, the thumb can move you this way. If you need to move the other way, you swap the thumb around. Now the thumb goes that way. But you sort of.
thinking a little hard on it, but yeah.
So, I
Go
mean,
on.
I'm just sort of going back to just like just the actual just the chapter and like what you want to do with it. This is interesting, but I'm just wondering if like if if you can um if you can like portray this in a way that just feels more dynamic, where it's like, yes, the reader does can kind of visualize this stuff better, but it's sort of when the guy is just talking about it, particularly like in those like paragraphs at the beginnings, it's like it's all very abstract. And I think that why not just have like an opening scene where May is literally, we just see her holding her hand up, and he's like, show me how to do thrust.
Or
May
maybe they're
does
in a
that.
ship.
Yeah.
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 You could take that for, it's just that, I mean, ultimately, like the thing that I want to see is like, I want to see somebody get this right, and I want to see someone get this wrong. I want to see someone zooming through space. And yeah, for the purposes of drama, I want to see someone crash into like the fucking brig or whatever. Like, I mean, it's
Yeah.
just it's like that's going to communicate to me, like for my purposes, just as like just like a dramatic feel of like what the stakes are. Is it just like to apply that to the real world? But even if you're not ready to do that in the first chapter, just have something tied into like a sort of physical tension or an action, particularly with May. Maybe May's nervous in demonstrating it, but just like, you know, if it's just her doing the hand motion, just focus on that and focus on her, maybe her nervousness, something like that. So that, because it's like when he's talking in those big paragraph chunks, and like I don't want to make this thing where it's like, oh, like some people like hard sci-fi, some people like don't like it, like I'm like somehow anti that. I'm not, you know, like I can read hard sci-fi, like I'm not turned off by it. Just I just want to like feel the tension and like visualize these things like taking effect, and not so much just having it explained in kind of like a lecture style. That makes
Right.
That's fair. Yeah. I like that idea.
The instance that I had tried to use this specific scene like this, I was trying to do like a day one in school where there was the really incredibly difficult problem, and the teacher is not pulling any punches on how incredibly difficult it is, to just make it all the more terrifying. It seems like by and large it's been done so far in a somewhat ineffective manner for the simple fact that it's too technical, it's too condensed. I need to kind of streamline some things and move some stuff around.
Yeah.
The danger is clear. You know, I mean, it's very clear from how it's being described that that what they're about to do is, you know, like hairpin. You know, you make the slightest mistake and you're spaced. You know, floating for you know, floating through eternity. But yeah, like, but it's hard to understand exactly what it is they're going to be doing and how it's going to look and everything. So yeah, giving us like a scene where maybe where they're already, you know, in the middle of their training, and they're flying these things, actively using these left hand right hand rules in order to do so.
Right.
And so May is struggling to do it. You can, you know, you're feeling her tension, you're feeling her fear, and like, oh God, I can't. If I make this mistake, I'm dead. And you know, she sees some of her friends, some of her classmates doing it right, some of them doing it wrong. Maybe someone dies in during the training session. You know, like actively seeing it, and it will also allow you to explain the process. What is going on in the engines of these ships? What are they doing with their hands to make the ships move? that so we can actively see how these scientific principles work while feeling the action and the tension.
Yeah, and in real flight school, they do simulators. So this could you could even start it off where they're doing this when somebody dies,
Right.
and so everyone's like, "Oh shit, Cadet Wilbur died," and the drill sergeant could be like screaming in her ear the entire time.
Well, we've got the simulator stuff. You know, I do incorporate that in the next scenes. It's
Oh,
just
all
it
right.
hasn't, and it also
every time
doesn't
that.
necessarily do anything to visually demonstrate the actual hand rules that we're talking about right now. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I would definitely have to reapproach it with that in mind.
I just
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I just kind of had like a left field idea, and it ties into not just talking about how to make this more dramatic, but also just my concerns about like just making this really feel like a book two, like for May and for the reader. Like so May starts out your first book. She kind of just gets dropped into the mining camp, and she's like the green hat or the rookie, and she's just like she's getting barked at, whatever, and she has her journey and becomes a hero. What if to kind of show like the passage of time and her growth? What if, I mean, like May is actually is actually leading it and is actually teaching other people how to do it? Like maybe more time has passed than and she's actually has some kind of authority now finally. Not like upper rank, or maybe she's just like just the top student and she's just called up there and she's actually delivering the instructions, because so much of the first book it was people explaining things to May over and over again, like in the mine and the whatever. And so maybe that might give it more of a book two feel, where it's like this is like a more mature, more confident May. It just occurred to me.
Right. That's actually something that I'm going to be going
Yeah,
for.
good point.
As it exists, she's not online to become a drill instructor, colonel of the military figure, but she's literally going to be a squad leader. The universe that I've built, the people in this class right now are the only humans who are allowed to know how to fly a plane. It's AI controlled otherwise to keep them disempowered. So May is going to literally be commanding a 6-person unit during these missions.
Good.
They're not pew pew. They're not those missions. But this is by and large a military mission, and she's got a crew of 6 operating. Pew pew. It's not like that.
You gotta type those sound effects.
Yeah, I'll do my
Yeah.
best. But you know what I mean? Like, so it very much is me trying to level up May with this book.
Okay,
Yes,
good.
I'm trying to go for that. All right. Well, I guess I still got to work on the
I was
rules.
gonna say,
and
you got what
getting
you
some
need, you
things.
think, or
Definitely enough to work on for sure. Yeah. I'll get at the drawing board and see what I can make with it.
yeah. So overall, I think some of the themes that like Cam was asking us to think about from this, we got about 2 minutes left before we're at the 2-hour mark. But so far it seems like the themes are about building tension and expressing what your character's place in the setting is what it seems to be so far. In Dan's, we need to know how Dulcie gets to where she is. How does she go from squid in a wheelbarrow to Silent Hill monster person that terrorizes the world. And Lance's, we're literally working opposite. We're finding out how Menno became who they were, and keeping that tense, and making sure that we know how Menno got to where he is in the world and why that matters. And with Chris's, we're seeing like where is May now? Like to start off with, where we need to know if she is a more potent character in this book. Maybe we need to start her off in a more potent circumstance and in a more powerful place, so that express those relationships and all of that type of stuff. What do other people think?
I entered mine into the chat box. I kept like mini notes of like 1 or 2 little blips from our things.
Yeah. Nice. Organic way to express antagonistic relationships, being variable, burdening text, urgency and pacing. Yep. Demonstration. Yeah, we all, everything seemed to be how do you show those kinds of things in a engaging way?
All right. All right, I'll just copy paste that into the Keybard thing now.
As I say, is everyone's cool with that? Because I'm cool with it. I feel like it
Holler
summarizes.
now. I'm not looking at the screen. We're good. All right, we're good.
Everyone seems to be nodding except Dan, who's looking confused.
I'm just very tired, but is that a thing now? Like we sort of do like a summation of the themes kind of thing, and we kind of.
I don't know if it's a thing or not, but it's a thing Cam asked us to do in the chat box while we were talking. So you may have missed it. Yeah.
It could be that he's trying to experiment with some new format or method or like
Avant-garde.
bonus thing or some such, you know.
So I'm thinking. Yeah, but he was like, "Hey, if you guys can
Plotting
come up with some
something.
themes, some
He's
through
plotting
theme."
something over there.
Yeah. He's gonna spring some major changes on us.
Okay, well, yeah.
All right,
Yeah,
team.
I'm cool.
I
with
appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for your data. It has been invaluable.
Hey, thanks to Dan, Lance, and Chris for sharing your work.
Yeah,
It's,
Yeah,
good
thank
to
you
have.
all for your
Absolutely, man.
input.
Absolutely.
good stuff, and see you next month.
Yep.
Alrighty.
Hope you do.
Got 'em up.